Welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King, joined here for our bi-weekly show with former Auburn AD Jay Jacobs. Phillip Marshall is on with us today as well. And Jay, I feel like every time we get on here, we're talking about something new and crazy and different about college sports nowadays, and that'll be kind of a big topic of discussion for us today. But something we wanted to get into first and foremost was you and your committee of ADs and former ADs sent out an advisory a few days ago, something that you guys had put together on the transfer portal. I guess just kind of talk to us a little bit about that. That's kind of where we'll get started today. I think that's sort of a trending topic that I think a lot of people have obviously been paying attention to.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. Phillip, we've known each other over 40 years.
Yes, sir. We have.
You wrote one of the first articles about me being a walk-on at Auburn and my mama bringing you cookies. I'm sure that didn't have any influence on whether you wrote me an article or not.
Oh, it did too, because all those are the best cookies I've ever had. I was bought and paid for.
No doubt about it. Well, the trend is catching up with you because that's what's happening in college athletics now. But my mother had that article framed, and my mother went to be with Jesus August the 30th this past year.
Oh man!
And so I have that framed article here in my house, and you've been a friend for a long time, and I appreciate it. It's good to be on here with you. And Nathan, our consulting group, AD Advisors, there are four of us with over 100 years of experience in college athletics. We released a second report. We did one back in December on the football transfer portal. But the one we just released in concert with Timark is over 14,000 men's basketball players over the last few years transferring. And the shocking headline of that is that 65% of those guys that go into the portal drop down a level or go out, don't find a home. And so our message is that, guys, you may want to transfer, just make sure you have a place to go. And athletics departments, Phillip, up until just a few years ago, we spent all our time recruiting student athletes to come to our campus, making them feel welcome, letting them see the resources, how we can prepare them for the future. And I'm not sure that on some campuses, I don't know this for a fact, but that's sort of gone by the wayside. Now it's all about how much money you can provide them for NIL. But the point that we're making as AD Advisors, and you all can read that report on our website, adadvisors.agency, the full report. ESPN picked it up, On3 picked it up, several other publications picked it up. But the one thing that we see changing on campuses is the relationship building with these guys. Some people could say that, all that matters is the money. Well, that may be the case. But for years and years, all that mattered was the relationship. And so we think that, lack of a better word, athletics departments need to bring in a human resource, what we used to call human resource department, a relationship department for the athletes, because you have to sort of speed date them now. You're not going to necessarily have them 3, 4, or 5 years. So when they first come on campus, you have to show them how they can be relational and the assets and the opportunities that the institution can provide them. So, but 65% of those 14,000 that went in the portal dropped down a level. And when I say a level, I mean if they were a Power 4 school, they dropped down to a Group of 5 or to a Division II, and then some of them never found a home. So anyway, it's most interesting, and I'd encourage people that they're interested in transferring, what's going on in college athletics as far as transferring goes, and particularly those interested in men's basketball, they should read our report on adadvisors.agency. So,
Jay, it's interesting to me. I do think relationships still matter, and I think that Auburn has a football coach and a basketball coach who clearly also believe that. And, but, I just think there are so many tentacles to this thing. I mean, there are some agents out there that really do have the best interest of the athletes at heart. And there's some other agents out there, too many. I'm talking about college agents who are just trying to make money. And if he thinks this kid can get more money somewhere else, he's going to encourage him to take it, even though it might not be the best thing for the kid. And then again, you got some parents who just want to want their kids to be happy. And I told this story a couple of times back when Courtney Taylor was at Auburn. And the summer before his senior year, I went to Carrollton, Alabama, doing a long story on him. And I sat down and talked to his parents, who lived in a modest little house there in Carrollton, which is basically, even then, was a dying town. But I asked by then it was obvious Courtney was going to be good enough to play in the NFL. And I asked his daddy, I said, I guess y'all are looking forward to him getting that big money. And his daddy, it really kind of offended him. He said, let me tell you something. He said, whatever he's got, he's earned by working hard. He said, the only thing we want for Courtney is for him to be happy and have a good life. I don't want his money. And you would like to think all parents would be like that, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them, it's like their kid's a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. And those are the things that distress me about the whole thing. And I just think, according to Bruce Pearl, Jani Broome had offers higher than Auburn's coming back for his senior year, but he wanted to stay at Auburn. And I do think there is maybe more of that than people realize. If you're making $1 million a year as a college athlete, what difference does 1.3 million make? So I just think there's so many aspects of it that are just unseemly. And like as we were talking before the show, and then is it really worth it? Auburn got to the Final Four and could as easily have won it this year as they didn't. And with two maybe NBA players in Jani and Tahad Pettiford, who's a freshman. But they had a lot of guys that they believed in each other, and they played for each other, and they believed in their coach, and they loved Auburn, and had maybe the best basketball team Auburn's ever had. And Auburn's had a lot of guys go to the NBA. They had Chuck Person and Charles Barkley at the same time, and Chris Morris right after them. And those were good teams, don't get me wrong. But to do what this team did, and to just dominate the best league in the country through most of the season. And it wasn't because they just had better players than everybody else. They had good players, really good players, and that did all the other things you need to do to be successful. And have a memory that for a lifetime for being part of it, even though they didn't get to their final goal. Once you get to the Final Four, that's a memory to cherish. And but I don't know. And here's the question I would put in: what do you do about it?
Well, I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm thinking Mr. Sherman probably had no idea his antitrust act was going to be used in the manner in which it's being used in college athletics.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot there, Phillip, that you just hit on. Let me start with the last piece first. Is that I believe that building a team in intercollegiate athletics is a very worthwhile thing. Louisville this year had more transfer players from last year to this year than anybody else, 14. Okay. I just read where Baylor has lost almost all of their players this year. And, they got a good coach out there in Scott. And so, but going back to what you were saying about the coaches, particularly Hugh and Bruce here, if you're a relationship coach and you also provide the NIL, you will have a chance to have a team get to the Final Four or the college football playoff. Okay. They're going to be those teams that catch lightning in a bottle or a blip on the screen that one year pay enough guys to come in. But it is what we're talking about here, particularly in men's basketball and football, it is a team sport. And harmony and caring about each other means a lot. I mean, how many years in a row has Alabama had a top-ranked recruiting class? And Auburn hasn't. But we've held our own with them because it means a lot to our guys. So you can't just go on talent alone. We beat them pretty regularly with what people would call lesser athletes. But that part of the relationship that happens at certain schools, it's just like a bond in your family. You can't break that bond. It is so strong, and it was so strong with our men's basketball team. And what's happening, what the NCAA did yesterday, taking away a lot of the rules, a lot of the regulations, that's going to help. The challenge is we continue to get sued. Every time we turn around, someone is suing the NCAA. And to be clear, the NCAA isn't these group of people we don't know. The NCAA are college presidents and chancellors. That's who's making decisions for the NCAA. Now, what has happened oftentimes is there's a disproportional amount of people making that decision on those different committees that don't have the same goal in mind. Specifically, what I mean is that, when we're trying to make football decisions for Power 5 conferences, why would anybody in Division II or some president that doesn't even have football on his or her campus, why would they get a vote in that? That's how it used to be. So we've got some, and a lot of us getting better, but everybody just needs to understand that the NCAA is us. Now, certainly Charlie Baker, he has some autonomy, but he has a board he has to answer to as well. So how we got here is partly because of the things that we've done and what our fans demand. One quick story. It was probably 10 years ago. My late dear friend, the commissioner of the SEC, Mike Slive, he told us all, we have to start finding a way to provide these student athletes more than a scholarship. Well, holy smoke. I mean, it was like everybody else in the NCAA, their heads exploded. And we can't second guess anything. It's just, could you imagine where we would be if we'd started this 10 years ago, where we'd be today? It would be far more under control, so to speak. And what I say by under control is that, you wrote a story this morning, Phillip, about the kid that went to South Carolina, Ohio State, back to South Carolina. I mean, at least we could give these students an opportunity to have a relationship and have some bonding at places that they are. And just the last thing on that is I have 3 daughters, okay? And all 3 of them work. Their job is important, but the relationships they have in their job are far more important than what they do every day. And they're in the same cohort as our current student athletes and former student athletes, 21 to 30 years old, and relationships matter. I saw the same thing at the University of Florida. I had this young staff, and it was like a revolving door, and we started trying to build relationships with them to keep them from leaving to go take another job. It's the same thing. So our student athletes that are doing this they represent the generation they're in. They're all doing that. And then lastly, a point you made, Phillip, is that my experience has been is that the adults are the ones that are screwing this up.
Right.
That I know for a fact that there have been adults get involved in talking about their child, their college student transferring if they don't get this or that. And the fact is that in a couple of those cases, the student athlete never even knew that the parent was talking to the institution about him or her leaving. And so, what's most important? What's most important is a solid foundation, and college athletics builds that. And this men's basketball team at Auburn they did it with a bunch of guys that cared about each other. They weren't all 5 stars. And we've done it in football over and over again, and other institutions have as well. And so we can't just forget how we used to get recruits is by relationships.
Right.
So,
you know, to me, you know, I know and have talked to generations of Auburn football players, as you know, going well back before your time. I mean, maybe the best example ever of that was the 1972 Auburn team, who just kept finding a way to win and believed in each other. But with very few exceptions, I was talking to Dave Beck, who I know you know, last week, and he was talking about the experience of being a college football player. We were talking because of Brother Oliver's passing. And he said, Brother Oliver, he said, saw me at the high school all-star game. I got Auburn's last scholarship, made all SEC. He said, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him. To me, you're hard-pressed to find a player, even from days when they got nothing, that doesn't cherish the experience. And for the most part, are better for it. And I mean, if you are an Auburn football player or an Alabama player or a Florida player or whoever, and you keep your nose clean and you do things the right way, you're not going to have any trouble starting a career. There's going to be people lined up wanting to hire you.
Exactly.
And I think that matters too. But instead, we've gotten to thinking like the NFL. And I just don't think college athletics. I mean, if you're not careful, you get to a point where you say, okay, do I want to watch these players play for money? Or do I want to watch the NFL or NBA players who are the best in the world play for money?
Yeah.
And I just think we've gotten really to a point where and I worry for the whole enterprise, to be honest with you, because already you hear people talking about, I just don't care about watching anymore. And because the whole thing of college athletics to me has always been the connection. These guys are playing for my school that I love. And, but now, like you said, it's and I hope there are more. I know there are some guys who don't do it just for the money, who stay where they are, even if they could get more somewhere else. But and I'm not talking about a guy like Cooper Flagg, for instance. He'd be foolish to come back. I mean, here in a few months, he's going to be extremely wealthy, and even more so than he could be by staying at Duke. Even though he'd be pretty wealthy staying at Duke too. But so that's always been the case. Just imagine what it's 1985 and Bo Jackson says, I'm going to the transfer portal. And it was like it is now. How much money could he have gotten to transfer? Cam Newton, same thing. Right. I mean, it's crazy, and I just don't see how it sustains itself long term. I just don't. Maybe it does. Maybe there's enough rich people out there that want to spend their money to help their team win. But if I was rich, I'd start to get tired of giving it away for that.
Well, a couple of things, Phillip. One is that if the House case gets settled, the funding is going to come from the athletic department, so it's not quite the brutal hit over the head to the
right.
donor. Okay, so to a certain degree that will be helpful, and we can come back and talk about that. The thing that where I think we are is let's do both. Let's create that unbelievable experience like Dave Beck and Rusty Dean and Mike Cohen and all of us that played college athletics. Also, we'll get NIL. Okay, we'll get some money. But let's do both. Let's don't let this big thing that we're all thinking about, NIL and transfer portal. Don't let that make us something different. Let's just incorporate that into what we already do so we can build those relationships and have those guys. Because, I mean, just think, so I'm involved with the Auburn Football Letterman Club since I've been back here in Auburn the last year or so, and people want to come back to Auburn. Former players want to be invited back and come back. Well, if I've been to 3 different schools, in 8 or 10 years, where am I going to come back to? Right now, it may not matter to those guys because they're focused on something else. We need to make it matter to them. We need for them to understand what the Auburn Football Letterman Club is doing for those guys that have played here, helping them find jobs, building career and professional relationships where everybody helps everybody. And you learn this player, and you hear about this female tennis player that she's doing this, and you build this unbelievable professional and personal network that will sustain you. And it will be an opportunity for you to be a giver, but also an opportunity for you to get back from your former teammates or people that went to the same institution you did. So I think you can do both. And I think that we've been so focused on NIL and what everybody's getting that I think the great teams, just like Bruce just did, I think that is a perfect example. And it's just coincidence that it's Auburn, but he is a unique guy. Okay. I believe there's a couple others like that too. I think Rick Barnes is the same way.
Yeah.
I think their relationship, there's probably a lot more that I'm not as familiar with, but I believe Todd Golden's that way. He's a relationship guy. So, if you just do both. Don't just say, it's like hiring one of my daughters. Okay, here's your paycheck. Here's your cubicle. Good luck. Nobody wants that. They may think they want that at the very beginning, but as they go through their career or their time at that institution or their time at that job, it's going to be unfulfilling to them. So I think you got to do both. And that's where.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
I'm of the opinion that the unfettered transfer as many times as you want has combined with NIL, or maybe even more than NIL, has created a lot of this. And I'm sure, I know everybody worries about getting sued, and for good reason. But and that's another story. But if there was some limit on at least how many times, I mean, there are dozens of guys who transferred somewhere last December, went through spring practice, and now they're back in the portal. It's like it's a tryout. And not to mention the thousands of guys that go in the portal in football and basketball only to find out that nobody wants them.
Right. Just like that men's basketball report we did, 14,000, 65% dropped down a level. So those two things linked together, Phillip, are the problem.
Yeah. I agree.
I think we go, you know what, you got 5 years to play 5 years and you can transfer this many times, because we're teaching a terrible lesson. I mean, we're teaching these young men that, you know what, if you wake up today and the eggs are cold, you're going to pick up and leave. Now, how does that translate to me as a young man when I have a job and or a family or responsibility, when I'm not used to having to stick through some stuff that may be a little bit harder than I'd like for it to be? I think that's what intercollegiate is all about. Intercollegiate athletics is all about, is teaching lessons that will help sustain you and make you a better leader the years after college. Now, that may be old-fashioned. People may disagree with it. I don't really care. I'm just telling you from my own experience of 40 years in this business, those things work. And people always come back and say, man, I'm glad I stayed. That's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's the things you can gain by staying and building those relationships, not just with your teammates, with your coaches, that are lifetime things. I mean, you mentioned the Letterman's Club, and we talked about the 1972 team. Those guys still love each other today.
Yeah.
And they're all old like I am. But they still love each other today, and when they get together, it's fun to be part of it when they get together. The 1983 team, I bet you that I mean, I was at the thing when y'all gave Coach Dye his ring and the trophy and those things, and what a special night that was, and the love all of y'all had for Coach Dye, who dadgum near killed you.
Right.
but it's our late friend Chet Williams told me about that. He literally was kicked off the team.
Yep.
And Kyle Collins, and he had a visit that changed his life, and he went back to see Coach Dye and said, I really want to stay. And look at what his life turned out to be, and the difference he made in how many people's lives.
Right.
How many of the young people who came through Auburn who are so much better off today than they were when that because of him, or at least partly because of him, and just all the lessons to be learned. I mean, Reggie Torbor told me one time, he said, when I came to Auburn, I hated white people. I didn't even like being around white people. And Reggie Torbor became a leader and the kind of guy you'd want your kid to be. And still is. I mean, Frank Sanders is a similar situation. And you learn so many lessons. And I know it sounds corny and people don't like to hear it anymore, but you learn a lot of lessons, whatever the sport is. It doesn't have to be football. Whatever the sport is, just by being a teammate and believing in each other and trusting each other and all those things. And I mean, I doubt Bo Jackson, if it wasn't for you, he probably wouldn't have gained all those yards.
I told Bo, I said, man, I need part of that Heisman. He said, I'll give you a finger. Guess which finger it is. But going back to my dear friend Chet, he impacted lives. He impacted generations.
Yes.
Because he impacted a bunch of young men's lives, and it is impacting their families' lives because of what Chet did. I'm involved in this ministry called Christians Working in Sports, and we have our annual meeting in July in Atlanta. And Mayo Sal, who spent time in prison, is leading a church in Atlanta, is going to be one of our speakers. So people that think that this is old fashioned or whatever they may think, it's just because they haven't experienced the other side of it. Once you experience the other side of what those relationships mean, then it's like, oh my, I don't know how many years ago when Ross Perot was running for president, he was talking about all the tribes leaving. People thought, man, he's crazy. Well, here we are now. My point is that, understand before being understood. This is different what's going on now. And I think that both can happen. I think that we can pay our athletes, and I think we can also provide an unbelievable experience for them on our college campus if we're given the time to do that. And I think that as time goes on, once they pop out the other end of this in 6, 8, or 10 years, they're going to look back and think, wow, I did this. The military has done this for hundreds of years, built teams like this by keeping everybody together. That doesn't mean that, some guy ends up at a bad place and he doesn't like it. He should be able to leave. But you shouldn't be able to leave just because. You should be able to leave if there's some circumstance under which, this really isn't good for me. And it shouldn't just be because, some agent wants you to make more money.
Right.
But I think you can do both, is my point. You can do both. I think at Auburn, and I think at some other schools are doing both.
Yeah, I guess that's the part that I've still got great relationships with players I've covered from before you, during your time, after your time. I talk to Jeffrey Whitaker all the time. one of the absolute best guys I know, and there are others. Like I said, Dave Beck, who he's been a friend of mine all these years, and Rusty. I don't have many better friends than Rusty Dean, and I could just keep going, and that's really, from my standpoint, what has made my job fun all these years.
Yeah.
I don't, winning is clearly, you got to win. I mean, that's, if you're a coach, if you don't win, you won't be there. But that's nothing new. It's always been like that. Now, they hadn't always said, you're fired. Here's $40 million to take with you. It hasn't always been like that. But most coaches I know, and I can't say all, most coaches I know are in it for the right reasons. If they end up being head football coaches at the highest level, they make a tremendous amount of money. And the amount of money they make, I think, led to some of this that's going on now. But I still think most of them are in it for the right reasons. And I had lunch not long ago with Doug Barfield. Wonderful guy. And was a wonderful guy when he coached. And he told me, he said, you know how much I made my last year at Auburn? I said, how much? He said, I made $42,000 and I got $20,000 for doing a TV show. But even like, I think late in Coach Bryant's career, they raised his salary to like $100,000 so he would qualify for more retirement. I mean,
yeah.
When I started covering this, it was not about money. It really wasn't.
Yeah.
It was not about money. And obviously you had to support your program. You had to have money to run your program, but it wasn't remotely like this. And I hope, I agree that you can do both, but you gotta work at it and want to. I'm not sure that, based on what I read about the transfers, that Auburn may have more talent top to bottom on their basketball team next year than they did this year. But all that team building and all those things, because it's going to be almost an entirely new team.
Right.
All those things that are part of it remain to be done.
Right.
Now, there's nobody better at doing that than Bruce Pearl.
Well, it all boils down to culture, Phillip.
Right.
What culture do you want? T. Boone Pickens said it takes 3 to 5 years to develop a culture. It takes 60 to 90 days to destroy one. There's one thing we know about Bruce is that he's gonna honor culture, and everybody's gonna get on board, or they're either gonna get right or get left. And
he is. I'm gonna tell you now. Did you know? And I know you've talked about the hiring of Bruce Pearl, I think, on this podcast before. But did you know what he was really like when you hired him?
No.
I mean, he is one of the most unique coaches I have ever come across. And he is as you know, a master salesman. But it's not, look at all the money he has raised for charity. A tremendous amount.
It's unbelievable. And I'll never forget, Phillip, one of the first times I introduced him to a group of donors. There's probably 40 people in the room. He gave everybody a cell phone number. And he keeps up with people. But going back to Bruce, there are 3 people that had a tremendous impact on me hiring Bruce. One was Dave Diddy, our compliance person at Auburn. He had been at the NCAA. He investigated Bruce. And so I called Dave in on Thursday morning. I said, what about Bruce Pearl? He said, I'd hire him. And Phillip, Dave doesn't play. And I said, why? He said, because let me tell you something, Jay. He said, he was remorseful and he'll never do that again. I said, okay. The second person was my dear friend, Mike Hamilton, the late AD at Tennessee.
Right.
I called Mike on that Thursday morning. He said, Jay, he is a phenomenal basketball coach, and he will lift every program at Auburn. He said he's phenomenal. You've seen what he did at Pat Summitt's basketball games, and he said, Jay, he is an unbelievable salesman. He'll represent the university. And then the key to the whole thing was Commissioner Slive. When I called him, because, Bruce was under that show cause, I called the commissioner and I said, Commish, what do you think about Bruce Pearl? He got quiet just for a few seconds. He called me J-Bo. He said, J-Bo, it's time for Bruce Pearl to be back in the SEC. And that was it. So I had those three guys, and so here we go. But I will tell you that, Bruce on that Friday night that I interviewed him, me and David Benedict interviewed him up there in Connecticut, he said, Jay, if you get me, you get all of me. I didn't really know what that meant. What we do today, we know what that means today.
We do. We do. He is like I said, I don't think I've ever covered anybody like him.
Yeah.
The closest at Auburn would probably be Sonny Smith.
Yeah.
Who also was a great, but it's a different time. But I've always thought that hiring for an AD at this level, it's a challenge to try to know you're getting the right guy.
There's no doubt about it.
Because you can never know for sure.
You never know for sure. And you have such a compressed hiring time.
Right.
And even though someone has had a lot of success at one place and the fans think this is the best person in the world to hire, they may not work out here.
Exactly. What they've done in the past doesn't necessarily, at some other place, doesn't necessarily carry over.
It doesn't. Phillip, I think you guys could do some research on this, but there are 14 ADs in the SEC. And of the three major sports, football, men's basketball, and baseball, that's a total 3 times 14 is 42. There's 42 opportunities to win a national championship. I think only 4 of the ADs in the SEC have hired a coach that's won a national championship in one of those sports. Mitch Barnhart's did it at Kentucky with basketball. Scott Strickland just did it at Florida with basketball. John Cohen did it at Mississippi State with baseball.
Yeah.
And Joe Castiglione did it at Oklahoma with football. Now I may have missed somebody there, but
you missed yourself.
Huh?
You missed yourself. You hired a coach.
No. I meant current ADs.
Current ADs, okay.
I mean, of the 14 current ADs, it's just tough. It's tough. 42 opportunities, and by my count, there's only 4. But I could be off one somewhere.
You look at it and take basketball. It's such a random game. Down the stretch against Florida, Auburn had their best shooter with an uncontested three-pointer that he didn't make, and another three-pointer they did make that got wiped out for a walking call, and then 2 missed free throws.
Right.
Those are all things you expect to happen. And if they had happened, Auburn probably wins that game.
That's right.
It's just such a random thing. Getting the guy to get you there, to me, I mean, you can't control what happens when you get there.
Right.
But getting the guy that's going to build a program that gets you there.
Right.
And if you get there enough, sooner or later you'll break through.
That's right. Exactly right. Because experience matters and culture matters. And I think now, Phillip, and you guys, I think there's 7 coaches, head men's basketball coaches in the SEC that have Final Four experience. I mean, that's amazing. In 2013, Commissioner Slive, on that Wednesday of the SEC tournament, I mean, he read us the riot act. And I think a large part is that when Bruce came to Auburn and started having success, everybody else said, we can do it too. And it just completely has turned this thing around. And we've had the resources to be able to do what we need to do. But the main thing, we always had the resources. It's just a matter of, did you want to spend them on that or not? That's all it was. And the SEC has made a commitment to every sport. That's why Auburn's at everything school. I mean, the golf teams wins the men's golf team wins the national championship. what we've done in softball and, all the volleyball and all different sports. I mean, you can get it done, but it is going back to the Final Four. Getting there matters. It matters.
Yeah,
Absolutely does.
Yeah, I think Kelvin Sampson is one of the best coaches in the country without any question. And he's been there, I think it's 6 or 7 times and hasn't won it yet.
Yeah.
And it's just hard. I mean, and the best team doesn't always win. I mean, you can make a case that the team that played the best that day wins, but winning the SEC, just like in basketball, winning the SEC at the level it is now against an 18-game conference schedule, that to me, that's really harder than winning 2 games in the Final Four.
There's not a sport that an SEC school sponsors that if you win the SEC championship, you have a very better than good chance to win the national championship.
Right.
Because it's harder. It's harder to do. And then when you get to the national championship, you may be playing somebody that hasn't had as hard of a schedule and has, different nuances going on. They may just like those plays you just mentioned about, us at the Final Four.
Yeah.
2 or 3 plays make a huge difference.
And no coach can affect that.
No.
I mean, all you can do is get your kids in position to have a chance.
Exactly.
And they'll either make it or they won't. But you can't. That doesn't mean that, and last year's SEC tournament and this year's Final Four, the relationship between Bruce and Todd Golden really added to it. And I knew Todd fairly well when he was at Auburn, and he was young. And the one impression I always, every time I talked to him, came away with was, this guy is freaking brilliant. He is just a very, very, very intelligent guy. And to be honest with you, I come away from talking to John Cohen feeling the same way. That this guy really gets it. And but you can, Coach Dye, I mean, you can claim the 83 national championship, but as far as the widely recognized national championships, he never won one. But that doesn't diminish what he did in his time at Auburn. I mean, he raised a program that was in a bad way to become a 4-time SEC champion.
Yeah.
And if somebody would have covered Fuller in the LSU game in Baton Rouge on 4th down, and they would have won that game, they would have been playing Notre Dame for the national championship, who was a almost 100% running team, and you couldn't run on that Auburn team.
That's right.
You could not do it. And so it's just, again, that wasn't a coaching mistake. Somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's intercollegiate athletics is great. We just got to all enjoy it and don't lose friendships over it, and cheer for your team, and just have pride in what you do. And we just all have to work together to try to make sure that we don't lose what we currently have, this great opportunity for young men and women to compete, and this great bond we all have for each other, players and fans and students. And it's just, I just think it's just a fiber of what we do here in America. And we just can't let the adults screw it up.
I think that's a very, very, very good point about the adults are responsible for this.
Yeah.
I don't think, I think players, especially once they started getting full cost of attendance and those things, for the most part, they were perfectly happy. Right. But then you have, and I'm not anti-lawyer. I get accused of it, but I am anti-lawyers that are just in it trying to find a way to get rich. And you got these lawyers. I mean, somebody asked me, said, well, who is House? Well, House is a Stanford swimmer that never stood to make any money.
Yeah, I think Arizona State, Phillip.
Okay, Arizona State. I thought it was Stanford.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got these lawyers going out and recruiting guys to file lawsuits.
Right.
And I know Kessler is widely respected and all that stuff, but him and his fellow attorneys are the ones that are making most of the money out of this.
That's right.
And I mean, there's not many players going to get life-changing money out of that settlement.
Right.
But they are.
Yeah.
And that's just like, quote, student athlete advocates. I mean, it's the same thing. They're trying to find a way to get their piece of that pie.
Yep.
And I think all of them hope that there someday is collective bargaining and they can be in charge of the 12,000 temporary player college football players association.
That's right.
I want to see somebody pull that off.
Oh man!
I counted up based on the scholarship limits. There are more than 12,000 players in the Power 4 now and the Group of 5. 12,000. How are you going to organize 12,000 guys who half of them will be gone before anything happens?
That's right.
I mean, to treat college football like the NFL to me is just it just isn't the same. It just isn't. And but anyway, I'm opinionated on all this stuff, and I'm not offended by players getting money. I think that's fine. And but what it's become when you combine that and the transfer portal, a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's some opportunities to correct it. And, I believe, Greg Sankey is one of the smartest guys.
That's another smart one. Yeah.
And I think they're going to figure it out. And so, our reports that we do, our consulting group, we're just trying to put the facts out there so people can see what really is.
How did that come about?
Well, me and, you mean the report of the consulting group?
The consulting group.
Well, when I finished at Florida, Ari Fleischer, who was President Bush's press secretary, I'd gotten to know him here at Auburn in 2010, and Jeff Holbrook, who is Wayne Gretzky's marketing guy, and a lady named Carlette Patterson, who's worked with several collegiate teams, even worked with some at Auburn on leadership. We decided, I just asked them, let's pull something together. Nobody, we're all, in maybe the third and fourth quarter of our lives. What can we do to help, college athletics? How can we give back with, all our years of experience? And so that's how it came about, Phillip. We just said, okay, let's create AD advisors and be a circle of support for athletics departments and athletic, ADs, athletic directors. And so that's how it came about. And so as we work with institutions, oftentimes, you read things and hear things that may or may not be factual.
Oh,
so we
yeah.
said, let's put some facts around this transfer portal. So that's how that came about. We did the first one in football in December, and then we just did this one, released it on Friday. And as I mentioned earlier, you can go to adadvisors.agency and read the full report. But we did a study of 14,000 men's basketball players in the transfer portal. So we're just trying to build facts around so we can get to what we've been talking about this whole time, Phillip, is get to a place that the pendulum's back in the middle, that student athletes are getting the funds they need, but also getting an incredible experience on campus.
Well, Phillip, I don't know if there's anything else you necessarily want to touch on here today. I thought it was a good wide-ranging conversation.
You should have joined in more.
I was happy to sit here and listen to you guys go back and forth. Absolutely.
I've certainly enjoyed it, Phillip. It's always good to be with you, brother.
Experience we have.
Exactly right.
That's,
I think it's up to us to pass that along. That whether people use it or not, that's okay. But I think that's what we're supposed to be doing.
We appreciate it as always, Jay. Thanks so much.
Give my best to your family.
I'll do it. You do the same with all those grandchildren.
Yes, sir. You'll have some sooner or later.
God willing, it's all in His hands.